Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow us on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, or at the website at viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. Now, this is a listener-supported program, so please go to the website, click on the button that says support, and give what you can. I thank those of you who have already given to keep us on the air. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I am on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divine inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And tonight's program is brought to you in part by St. Teresa Open Catholic Seminary, progressive, independent, truly Catholic education for ordained ministry and lay leadership. For more information, you can call 1-800-790-9739, or you can check out their website at www.stocseminary.org. That's one word. And again, I thank you for your support. Now, I have a really good friend on air with me tonight, Jesse Ruiz, and you're going to learn a little bit more about Jesse. In addition to him being a professional funeral director, and I want to be real clear with the word professional. He's not simply a service director, and I'll tell you a little bit later the difference between the two, and I'm sure he'll help me as well. But in addition to that, Jesse is a veteran, United States Marine Corps. He served in Iraq, if I'm correct.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And for that, I'm very proud to have him as a friend. But for those of you who kind of missed the calendar yesterday was D-Day. And we had two things we looked at yesterday with D-Day and also the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And if you look back at your history, this is when we stormed Normandy. 9,000 people, Americans, died the first day. All so that we could have freedom to go against the oppression of the Germans. And it's that day that you see that famous placing of the United States flag by the Marine Corps, marking our spot, saying to the Germans, "This far, no farther. We've taken over." And a lot of what we call the greatest generation, according to Tom Brokaw, came from that. And, I at funerals, when I do funerals for veterans, one of the things I do, and Jesse's heard this before, I had written something for my uncle who was Coast Guard. And when we folded the United States flag, I realized we really didn't know what we were doing. So I researched it, and I wrote the following, and I hope you'll endure me for a few moments. But I like to talk about why we fold the flag, because it has great meaning. And as you're aware, the United States flag is made up of 13 stripes, a blue haven, and 50 stars. Each one has a meaning. The red stripe is symbolic by the blood that's been shed by so many. Our Lord Jesus Christ said, "No greater thing can one do than to lay down his life for his friends." Well, the brave men and women of the armed forces have said, "I will lay down my life for you that you may have your freedom." That's the red stripe. The white stripe is symbolic of a young nation, an innocent nation, a nation where you can come and not live under tyranny, that you do not have someone saying you have to be this, that, or the other, that you can choose for yourself. Now, I know on this program we have many churches represented, and because of that white stripe, we're allowed to worship as we choose, each one of us. Well, the white stripe wasn't free. It was purchased with the red stripe. The blue haven, the heavens, the abiding place of God, under which we all live. And a star, one for each state underneath this awesome God. When we fold the flag, we fold it into a triangle, which is the strongest known geometrical shape to man. And as we fold it, slowly but surely, the red and white stripes go from our view, not from our hearts, most certainly not from our memories, just from our view. And they go into the blue haven, again the heavens, the abiding place of God. And there, a star, one for each veteran who now acts as a guardian angel overlooking the great nation they so bravely protected. We present the flag to a member of the family, and many of you listeners have received one of those flags for loved ones. And with it, it's a token of our gratitude. a gratitude that runs so deep that we cannot put it into words. So I give you a folded flag. It may not seem like much of a token, but with it carries the gratitude of every man, woman, and child that lives on the freedom of that flag that your loved ones so gallantly served for. And so, with the important date coming up, I just wanted to share that with you, and I want to thank Jesse for his service in the United States Marine Corps. They are good men and women there, and sometimes I think we forget to say thank you for what they do. And having said that, Jesse is the owner of Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario, my hometown.
That's right.
And say hello to our listeners, Jesse.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you to Father John for allowing me to be here today. I'm also very thankful to my family, my beautiful wife, Bianca, your number one fan. I hope she's watching us right now. I'm sure she is. She's my 9-year-old. Every Thursday, without miss, she'll watch the show. So I'm just grateful and thankful to be here.
Well, when you said Bianca, I was going to say, isn't your wife named Letty? I married you to.
That's right.
Well, Bianca, I hope you're listening, and thank you for listening to the show. You know, I think the world of your dad, and I'm glad to I have such smart listeners, such great listeners,
you
and
sure
pretty
do.
ones.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
So tell us a little bit about your spiritual travel. You know, you grew up where?
I grew up in San Pedro, the South Bay, through Torrance, Carson, Wilmington. I actually, when I started this profession in the funeral industry, I moved out of San Pedro, my hometown. What happened was nobody was hiring. I had to do an apprenticeship right after I finished Cypress Mortuary College. So I ended up in Glendora.
Wow.
Glendora.
So Forest Lawn area.
No, well, Forest Lawn area, but I was working for Oakdale.
Oakdale, yeah.
Yes. I actually started my apprenticeship with Oakdale, and it was still family owned.
Oh, you said Glendora. I was thinking Glendale. I'm sorry.
No.
I am dyslexic, guys, and you don't give me a map quest. I'll head you for Ontario, and you wind up in Chino.
Oh, not good.
Yeah.
So I did my apprenticeship there at Oakdale, and it was still Mr. Bascorn who was the owner, the family. Correct. I learned a lot there during my apprenticeship. This profession has been very rewarding to me. I truly love what I do. I love helping families. That's my passion.
Now, I understand at one time you had considered becoming a physician. Is that correct?
Well, prior to this profession, I wanted to work for the coroner's office, as a technician to do the autopsies. A lot of the technicians are licensed embalmers who will prepare the body if the coroner wanted to keep that body for future references, etc. So a lot of technicians, that was my goal initially.
I did not know that. You just educated me on that.
Yeah.
I thought everything was done by the coroner themselves, and I never thought about the fact you always see, because I used to watch Quincy. I want you to know
right.
that they always had the assistants. All right, those of you who just said that to your radio, same to you. But so you got started in that direction, and what drew you to the field?
What happened was back in high school, like any typical teenager, I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. Thank God my counselor called me up. She says, hey, you know what? We need to talk. I'm like, okay. She goes, what do you plan to do for the rest of your life? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, what do you like? I'm like, well, I'm thinking something medical.
Right.
So she goes, okay, great. Why don't you become a hospital volunteer? And you'll get to see the full gamut of the medical profession. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And sure enough, I started volunteering. I did that for about 2.5 years. I loved it, but I have a lot of respect for nurses.
Sure.
Nurses, they're angels. I honestly. I started assisting the nurses. I started helping them with the patients. Eventually, I said, this is not my calling. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, is there something else I can do? She goes, the other departments are full. They've got volunteers. I'm like, well, is there one that I can just kind of shadow somebody? She goes, well, the morgue is the only department that's available that needs help. And I go, well, can I try it out? She goes, sure. I'm like, okay.
They tell you it was a dead-end position?
Basically, yes, basically. But they said everybody was scared to help out, and I could see why, but it didn't scare me. I wanted to do it. So I started helping out the assistant. So whenever any patients passed away, we would go to the room, obviously place them in the bag, and then bring them downstairs. log them in, etc. So I think that's where my passion kind of grew, headed towards that direction. The gentleman was actually already starting not his doctorate, but prior to that.
Right. Pre-med.
Yes, pre-med. And he was going to be a pathologist. So that's where I kind of was headed towards. But then back in 90, then that's when Desert Storm broke out. I graduated high school, and then I joined the Marine Corps. Again, I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't set in that. And joined the Marines. 4 years later, came back home, and I was back to square one.
Now, what did you do in the Marine Corps?
I was actually a mortarman.
What?
A mortarman, 0341. That's the guys that you see in the movies where they're kind of on their knee. They put it's kind of like a small rocket.
Yeah.
It's inserted and
I was just
jumps out.
Debating whether to do a mortified joke or not. That's all. That's why I was looking at you that way. I just didn't have the heart because we're such good friends.
It's okay.
And I didn't want it to blow up in my face. So
you're silly. So I mean that's and honestly I see life differently. The Marine Corps, I mean, it engraves in you, inside you, what you need to do as a human being,
right?
As a man, and those are core, core values that you will take for the rest of your life.
Sure,
that will guide you.
You're looking to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Correct.
And you look more towards the big picture, not necessarily what is going to be personal benefit as it is community benefit.
Correct. And absolutely.
And I think that's something we're really needing right now in our society. And now I'm not trying to put anybody down here, but I really think it would be helpful if more people learn that to be part of a community, you need to look towards something, a commitment that's bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
And, that's one of the things I found in the priesthood was it can't be about me. If I'm no big deal, it's no big deal.
Correct.
Instead, it has to be about something larger than me, larger than my schedule. And in doing that, I find real joy in living.
Absolutely.
But as long as I'm focused on just what's good for me, I'm always searching for something that's good for me.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Now, I know you have done some funerals of fame.
Correct.
You've done that, and I don't know how much you can talk about that, how much you can't. But is there any particular ones that really stood out for you that you thought, wow, I'm working with this person or anything?
You know what? I'm glad you bring that to light. Again, the families that we've served, that I've served, I have great compassion. I understand where they're coming from. Families, regardless of who the decedent may be, it's this person is still a mom, a dad, a child, a father.
Yes.
So we take great pride in that, and I take great pride in that. And I've had the honor to help and assist with these families. And, it's just something unbelievable that even I can't believe. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I really helped this family. And it's just, I'm blessed. I'm just very thankful.
Outstanding. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about this after the break. My guest tonight is Jesse Ruiz. He is the owner of Personal Family Planning. And we're going to talk a little bit more what to do if a death occurs in your family.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why, when you can host your own radio show? You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065 and get ready to transmit.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. My guest tonight is my good friend, Jesse Ruiz. By the way, a couple of real announcements I should have done during the first part, but you know me. We don't call me slow, we call me special. And that's a couple of appearances I'll be doing. On July 14th, which is a Saturday, in Claremont, I'm working with my dear friend, Martha Bass. We're doing a workshop on forgiveness. This is going to be a powerful workshop. If you want to know more about it, go to the Facebook page, Viewpoint with Father John. Of course, that's on Facebook. And you can contact us through there. And we're going to have more information to the exact location where we're going to be. Martha's been wonderful working on that. So that's on the 14th. I'll go from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and lunch will be included. That'll be $35. I don't know anywhere in Claremont you can get lunch for $35, let alone get a workshop with it. Then on July 20th, which is a Friday at 7 p.m., I'll be at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in Covina. That's at 100 North 3rd Avenue. And I'll be with Father Steve DeMuth. And it's called An Evening with Father John. And it will be a book signing for my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. We'll be doing a Q&A with Father Steve and myself. He'll be asking questions. And then we'll open it up for any of you who'd like to ask a question. And you can buy a book there and I'll sign it, or you can order one ahead of time on Amazon.com. Look under the book section for I started to say Viewpoint with Father John. Good luck if you get that there. But it will be at Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. And order as many of them as you like. I don't want to limit you at any case. We're coming up on Christmas in a few months, so stock up. But we'd love to see you there. And I always love meeting listeners of the show, and I've been finding out that we've been getting listeners all around the globe, from Brazil to the Philippines, and so I thank you who are tuning in online, and some who are watching on YouTube and Ustream and iHeartRadio. So now that I've gone through all the personal stuff, and also a shout out to Brandon, who's our fantastic board operator. He's the man behind the glass. He's the superhero. He's waving at me and saying, "Knock it off." And also a shout out to my wife, Gabby, who is on her way home from LA right now. And I miss having her here. But just know that if I say something wrong, it's because she did let me come here without proper adult supervision to play with my friend Jesse. So, having said all that, let's say that someone in the family has died. They're at home. What should I do as a family member that my family member died?
A couple of things. Number one, very important. Was your loved one under hospice care?
Good question. I understand if we were under hospice care, the hospice staff would actually contact and do the death report.
Correct. They would come and pronounce your loved one deceased.
Right.
And then at that point, then you would select the funeral home, and then the funeral home would come and bring your loved one into their care, basically. Which,
just a little thing I'm going to throw out there, one thing I truly found is somebody who's had to do this for loved ones, pre-planning is very important.
Extremely. Yes.
Because when you're having to make those decisions on the go,
Yes.
there's always somebody who gets their toes stepped on, no matter how considerate you try to be.
Yes.
But let's take the case where it's a sudden death,
Correct.
and there was no hospice involved. They haven't seen a doctor in 90 days.
Correct. At that point, you would dial 911 and call the ambulance, let them know that your loved one passed away or they passed out. They would come, and then depending on the circumstances, they would make the call to say we need to call the police or go ahead and call the funeral home. Again, depending on the circumstances.
Absolutely.
So.
I've been, as someone who gets called as a priest out to a lot of stuff, where it's questionable where it was suicide or if it was a natural death. And I've had to go in there where they have cordoned off the area. In this case, it was sheriff's office. And the only reason that they did let me go in to give sacraments, what we used to call last rites, now the anointing, was because I'm also a police chaplain.
Correct.
So they allowed me in. Otherwise, they're trying to keep the scene as clean as possible. And so when they're not letting people in there, they're not trying to be mean, they're not trying to be unthinking. It's just that if it was a suicide, they want to make sure that they can document accurately, or if it wasn't a suicide but was made to look like it, they want to keep the crime scene clean. And I know that sounds terrible to hear on the radio, but boys and girls, that happens, and I'm sure that you and I both have dealt with families where that's been the case, and it's heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
But it happens in this world.
It does.
So they call 911. The paramedics come out, police come out, and then let's say they clear them. That doesn't have to become a coroner. When does it become a coroner's case? Let's talk that.
Again, depending on the circumstances, when the peace officer gets her, they're basically the first at the scene. They'll make the assessment. They'll definitely say, okay, the coroner needs to be called. Then at that point, they will wait for the coroner's office to come out and do their somewhat investigation. If they feel that they need to take that person into their care, they will.
Right. And so let's say it's not a coroner's case. So they call you, you come out, and what's the process?
At that point, let's say that it's not a coroner's case. We would bring your loved one into our care. Depending on the time of day or night, we would basically have to figure out who the next of kin is. We do have to follow the law. We have to find out exactly who is the next of kin.
Right.
Once we figure that out, then we actually set up an appointment to meet with the next of kin. And, everybody is welcome to be there as well. But the next of kin is our priority. We need to find out who the next of kin is. Whether it be if there was a healthcare directive assigned to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If there was none, then we go down to the spouse. If there are no spouse, then it goes down to the children and the parents. And we just go down a list that by law we have to abide by.
Now, let's say that the person has died, they've done everything they're supposed to, and you're at the house, but they're still trying to get a hold of the clergy, and the clergy's still on their way. Do you give them time for the clergy to arrive and do the blessings before you take custody, or is that something that they'll have to do later? What's your policy?
Our policy is we give the family time. We've had circumstances where the family is out of town, family is in Ontario, the rest of the family is in LA or San Diego. We give them time. And most of the time the families will tell us. They'll say, look, we're waiting for mom or dad. They're driving from San Diego. We'll wait. We're in no rush to push, or, we give the families the time that they definitely need. We understand and know that they're going through a very, very difficult moment. Losing a loved one, that's the most difficult situation that us as humans, we have to go through this life.
Yes.
And it's seeing, both of us seeing families, we see what they go through. And it's just about patience and love and being there for the families. And
I found, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, and correct me if it's not the case, but I found that death either brings out the best or the worst in people.
Absolutely.
And you and I have worked
we've
a lot
had
of
couple.
Yeah, we worked a lot of families together, and we've had some that have been marvelous. And I've gone back. I remember I had this one family that when I spoke with them before the funeral, the way they described Dad, I hung up the phone and I bawled like a baby because it was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, because they talked about how much every one of them knew he loved them. And I mean, they went into detail that there was no question that their dad loved them. And it was so beautiful. I literally cried when I hung up the phone. And then I've had them. I've had one recently where you think you should have SWAT waiting outside the chapel. Okay?
Oh, my goodness.
So talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've encountered.
We've had so many different families. I mean, we help all faiths, non-denominational families, Buddhist families. We actually, was it back in January, we helped out a Tongvan family.
Oh, cool.
It was my first family that I helped out. It was absolutely beautiful. It was a little different. It was the patriarch of the family. We did, and actually what happened is in their tradition, the wife came and just the granddaughters and daughters, they were the only ones that were allowed in the room to dress dad.
Oh.
They did special rituals and they dressed him all in white. We placed him in his casket. The following day, we actually took him to his church. It was about 4 o'clock, and we had to pick him up prior to midnight that same night.
Right.
We picked him up, brought him back to the funeral home, took him back the next day for a service. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting, and it's just beautiful, the tradition, the immediate family was wrapped in a special mat. Each one of them, they were all wrapped in this special mat that they all had. And just seeing that, I was like, wow, this is just unique and just beautiful. But we run across so many different traditions and families that it's just, I'm blessed. I'm absolutely blessed.
Do they do like the Samoans where they do the shoulder carry of the casket?
Yes, they did. Once the service was done, the immediate family came, the sons, just like the Samoans, they raised the casket, placed it on their shoulder, and we walked out through the church.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when you are arranging clergy, that could be difficult. Now, if they belong to a church, it's usually not so bad.
Correct.
If they don't belong to a church, how do you handle that if they want to have some type of religious service, but they don't have clergy?
Well, we actually have several clergy, as yourself, that we call upon for those families. We actually have several chapels within different cities strategically situated where they actually we rent their sanctuary, and we have clergy that can be non-denominational, can be Catholic, where they would come and actually perform the services. And a lot of the families, I would say maybe the newer generation, they're not as traditional,
right?
Where we do have a lot of these types of services.
Now, I think something that's important for some of the listeners to know, and some people say, well, this is a subject that's kind of interesting for Viewpoint with Father John. But these are important things for you to know because every one of us is going to have to deal with this.
Absolutely. And
cremation can be really difficult sometimes if you don't have the right signatures beforehand. Because if there's children involved, if I'm correct, if all the children live within the country, don't they, unless there's something in writing ahead of time, all have to sign off on the cremation? Is that?
Or the majority.
The majority. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The majority.
Right. And explain that a little bit so listeners have a little better view, because I know I'm stumbling through that and I'm not doing you justice.
So following back with the initial phone call that we have with a family member, I mean, sometimes we'll have the decedent's cousin or the son, and that's the person that first contacts us. And again, we have to find out, okay, was your loved one married? Was there a healthcare directive? That's when you do, per se, the weeding out.
Right.
Because you have to find out, well, let's say there's no healthcare directive, there's no pre-need, there's no parents, so it would fall back to the children. Now, let's say there's 6 children. Obviously, we would have to get 4 of the children, which would be the majority of the 6, to sign all the authorizations, specifically for cremation. That's very sensitive. Same thing with the cemetery. They would need to find out, okay, who's the next of kin. If they're all just children, okay, we need to get the majority or all of them. So it falls back on that legality that we have to abide by.
Now, there's another situation that I run across quite often these days, and I'm not knocking it. It's just the way things are. They've been living together forever but never got married, and there may or may not be children involved.
Correct.
What happens?
we run across that. It's pretty common. It can go both ways. Luckily, several times we had it where one of the mates actually assigned somebody a healthcare directive. Now,
Right.
a healthcare directive that supersedes a spouse. So let's say they were married, and this person assigned a healthcare directive. That is the person in charge, the healthcare directive.
Is that different than a durable power of attorney?
It's the same. It's a durable power of attorney for healthcare.
Okay.
Correct. That supersedes a spouse. And we've had it where they were married for, let's say they were married for 50 years, what have you, and they've assigned a son a power for a healthcare directive. And unfortunately, that's the person in charge. So we'd have the partner just upset. But, I'm sorry, we have to follow the law.
Yes.
But in the other instance where they've just been married or just together, they haven't been married legally, there's no kids, we fall back to a couple of other legalities that we have. After 7 days, if the person was, let's say, non-married, after 7 days that person has passed, legally anybody can actually take possession and do all the authority or the signatures. If there's kids that we are aware or not aware, they can sign off their rights. So there's other different tools that we have in our possession to work with any situation like that. So,
Oh, that's cool.
the families.
This is really important information because I know with a lot of families that I deal with, particularly when I worked hospice, that at the moment they were lost and they just didn't know what to do. And a lot of times, if they do have clergy where it's a chaplain from the hospice or a social worker from the hospital, or if they belong to a church that has a good bereavement group, that gives them a little foot up on what's going on. But so often, people have never dealt with this. And one of the reasons I wanted my listeners to be introduced to you is I want them to see what a real professional funeral director, a true mortician, is, because there's a difference
There's a
between
stereotype.
yeah, and there's also a difference with and I'm going to make a lot of people mad here who I work with with funerals, but there's a difference between a big organization that just runs people like an assembly who give no real training to the staff, and somebody like you who's gone to college for this, has licenses for this, not just one. You have multiple licenses. Because there's the funeral director license, there's the embalmer license, and you do all of that. And so when people go to you, they don't just, and I'm not doing a commercial for Jesse, but I think it's important to know, from beginning to end, Jesse's involved. And that's why when my time comes, my pre-need's probably going to be with Jesse, because of the fact that I know that I'll be cared for by somebody who doesn't just do this as a job, but does it as a ministry. What's the difference between a job and a ministry? A job is just something you do because you need the money. A ministry is something you do with passion. You do with your heart. You do it because you have a calling to do that, and you want to do it better than anybody because you care about the people you're serving.
Correct.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about being a professional opposed to an amateur funeral director on the other side of the break. Again, my guest tonight is Jesse Ruiz, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Ontario's Host Lions Club is hoping you'll come out to their 8th annual We Serve golf tournament. Check-in is at 11 a.m. Thursday, June 15th at Sierra Laverne Country Club. It supports 7 local charities and 8 area projects. Dean Munoz is the golf tournament chair. Give him a call at 909-481-1180. Come out and golf on June 15th to support the Ontario Host Lions. 909-481-1180.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. We're on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John. And just as a reminder, we're partly brought to you tonight by St. Teresa Open Catholic Seminary. Always the second time around, I have trouble with it. Maybe I have to redo my first year of seminary.
Yeah.
But anyhow, Open Catholic Seminary is progressive, independent, truly Catholic education for ordained ministry and lay leadership. You can call for more information, 1-800-790-9739, or check out their website at stocseminary.org. And my guest tonight again is Jesse Ruiz, the owner of Professional Family Planning. And a couple of things we're talking about before the break is the difference between a professional funeral director and someone who just works in the industry. And a lot of people don't understand, when you go to some of these big places, not everybody can call themselves a funeral director. That is a licensed position. You have been tested, you have qualifications, and you actually have a license from the Consumer Affairs from the state of California. But you'll hear people refer to themselves as service directors. Now what that means is that they just got a job at one of the funeral homes. There's no required training. Some get some don't. But there's somebody who goes and just works services. Personally, and this is just my view, okay, so take it for what it's worth. I'd rather have somebody who's a licensed funeral director somewhere on that service, so that if I have some questions about things, I know I can depend on their answers. And that's not to put anybody down. But what does it take to become a funeral director, not just a service director?
Basically, I know at this point legality, you do have to have your associate's degree in order to take the exam, and it's a state board exam. You basically can download their outline for the exam through the DCA, and you just take the exam basically. I know traditionally, going through school with embalming school here, there's two in California. I don't know if I touched on that. There's only two schools in California that just focus on mortuary science. One is here in Cypress, and the other one's up north in Sacramento.
Right.
It's very, very kind of, like I said, the doorway or the schooling is very, it's minimized. It's just two colleges. So I know the waiting lines to get into school, they're fairly long.
Yes.
So it's very specialized. But, I think, honestly, being in this profession for the past 20 plus years, you got to have the passion. You got to have the love, as we touched on it. I told myself plenty of times, the day when I wake up and I just don't feel it, I'm going to get out of this profession, because you can't feel like that. You're dealing with families again, who have just lost a loved one. You have to have that empathy. That I can't stress that enough.
Yes.
As a professional, once you get your license, you know that if this is your calling, you are a licensed funeral director. You are there to help people, regardless. You know? So I think that's the biggest difference.
And I've been blessed to know some really wonderful people in the profession.
Absolutely.
I've also known some that I've been less than happy with. And that's why I'm real picky about who I send people to. Now, two things I want to talk on in this last part. One is personal planning, advanced planning. And then I want to talk about what happens after the funeral. How do we care for ourselves with grief and such? So why don't you talk to us for a minute about pre-planning, if you will.
Absolutely. I cannot stress enough the pre-planning. When we sit with a family that has everything pre-planned versus a family that has nothing planned out, it's night and day. Comparing both appointments, both families, somebody that has pre-planned their services already has picked out the casket, what clothing they're wearing, the flowers, everything down to the details. As the families come and gather, we just basically pull out the file and we'll say, this is what your loved one wanted, and we do it because there's no question as to what does she want, what is she like, what flowers does she want. No, there's no question, zero doubt.
Now, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but I think there's something very important while we're talking about that a lot of people don't know about pre-planning, and that is, it doesn't matter where you did the pre-planning, that insurance can be honored by any funeral home. And sometimes they'll tell you, oh, no, you have to do it here. That's not true.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry, I just had to
I'm
put my
glad,
nose in there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is absolutely truth. Like Father John mentioned, it does not matter who you did you pre-planning with, whichever funeral home. My team, they're called Family Services Care. It's a whole team that's all they do for us. All the pre-planning. They're wonderful. He's actually a Marine as well, Greg. So we go back, and we have that bond as well. And our mission is to help families. That's the bottom line. But they will take care of all of our families, and they will pre-plan from A through Z. As I mentioned earlier, the loved one you get to pick the casket, the clothing, everything. Every single detail is not missed by that person. The one thing that I want to stress is that when a death occurs, the person that has passed, they're free. They're in heaven, wherever they may be. But that person's loved ones, they are the ones that have to come up with the money. They are the ones that, however they're going to get that money, they need to get that money. So when there's a pre-planned insurance in place, there's no worry in regards to that. Everything has been pre-planned and prepaid, etc. So I can't stress enough how pre-planning is very important for our viewers.
Absolutely. And now I tell families quite often that 6 weeks after the funeral is where the grief really hits. I mean, you'll feel stuff before then. But after 6 weeks, everybody's gone home. There's no more paperwork to do. You're not running back and forth getting death certificates and trying to get insurance plans paid and stuff. What do you suggest when a family gets that 6 weeks? Do you suggest they talk to a counselor? Do they a group?
What we do the final meeting or appointment that we have with families that we have help through it is the death certificates. Keep in mind, death certificates take anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks for us to receive them from the health department.
Right.
So when we take them to our families, we actually just honestly provide them with a list of different hospices within the area wherever they may live at. And we do stress out. You can tell when somebody needs that help, that extra, counseling or group setting, and we point that out. That's basically the extent that we do go through.
I think that's very important. We say quite often on the show that people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Correct. And
you and I have talked many times in doing services together that we only get one chance to do this right. Yep. Only one chance. So it's important to get it right that one time. And aftercare, I think, is just as important as the forecare to it. And so I'm glad to know that you do have resources that people can go to and say, okay, here's a list, and they might be helpful. And one of the ones I use as well, and I don't know if you've been familiar with this because I don't know who's on your list, but when it's a suicide or the death of a child, I use Compassionate Friends. And there's one down in the Chino Pomona area, and they specialize. It's a group for people who either lost a child or lost a loved one through suicide, because that's a special kind of grief.
Absolutely.
And there's always unanswered questions. Sometimes we find ourselves angry with the person who died, and then we feel terrible because we're angry at somebody we love.
Yep.
And sometimes we just don't know where to turn. And so, again, if you're dealing with a professional group, they have these lists to say, here's some directions you can go in that might help you and get you started on the road. They're not necessarily going to do the therapy themselves, but it's just like, as a priest who does counseling, I don't specialize in everything, but I have a list of people who specialize in different things. And so they may come to me and I can point them in a good direction. If you go here, you can get help for that. If you go over there, they have resources for that. So it sounds like you do something similar with what you're doing. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. Also, if you visit our website, 4pfp.org, we do have some of them listed on there as well as far as resources. But again, I think it's very important to find that help if you do need that help. You're not alone. There's so many different resources where you can turn to get that help.
And Jesse's information will be on the show website. That's viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. And father is spelled out. It's not just FR with a period. Because some people, are used to doing that. Right. So it is viewpointwithfatherjohn, one word.com. And over the next couple of days, I'll be putting his contact information so you can get a hold of him, also not just to plan a funeral, but you may have questions that you want to ask him. And I've known Jesse for a lot of years, at least 15 years that I can think of. Yeah. And that's why I brought him on, not just because he has a commercial on the show. Okay, I want to be real clear about that. And any of you know me know that I'm very serious about that. Yeah. But because he's someone I trust, someone I value, someone who I have no problem saying when someone asks me, where should I go? I have three, Jesse and I talked about this. Mm-hmm. I have three places that I send them because to me they are the top in California. And he's on that list of three. So that says a lot about him. And those of you who know me in city life know how important integrity is to me, that there's no room for second place in that. Absolutely. Just no room for that. Jesse, you're a wonderful guest. I'm glad you're here. And to your family, I say hello. I think back to your beautiful wedding we did together. That was kind of neat with your charming wife. And
Matty. Yeah.
And so give the names of the children.
Well, actually, my oldest just graduated FAA school.
Wow.
Yeah, he's 21, Andrew.
So he's a little flighty.
Yeah, a little bit. No, no. Actually, the training that they go through, it's intense. Down to the last day, they take an exam. If you don't pass, you're done.
And it is one of the most stressful jobs you can ever have.
Yes. So very proud of Andrew. He's actually in New Jersey now.
New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey. Yep. He just started, I believe, Wednesday. He started his job. Oh, today's Thursday. Yeah, he started yesterday.
Folks, we've reached that age where we have to ask each other, what day is this?
Next one is Jessica. Awesome young lady. Vincent. Then Bianca, the little one.
Yeah. Well, Bianca is the best one because she listens to my show.
She's a faithful listener and she watches your show. Absolutely.
I might have to give you an extra mug when they come in, one for her because she's our star listener.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get some letters for that one from other listeners that tune in every week. Hey, where's my mug? Well, for a donation of $20, I'll send you a mug too. So it's plus shipping.
There you go.
See, I'm learning plus shipping.
Yeah,
that's very good. Unless I drive it over myself, then I'll ask for gas money.
There you go.
But it's,
nice.
So this is great, and I hope you'll give my love to your family. I adore them, and Letty's been in the business for.
She was in the business briefly, but she's a teacher. She's a second grade teacher.
That's right.
She loves her job. I'm very proud of her. I love her, and I wouldn't be here without her. So
thank goodness for the women in our life. Yes. I wouldn't be here without Gabby, and well, I'm here without her tonight, but I'm sure she's listening right now, and I will find out everything I need to know when I get home. I'm sure that she's marking the book. She has a very good and bad child list than Santa Claus. I'll tell you what.
Goodness.
And she really does put a lump of coal in my stocking from time to time. You just never know how to handle that.
Yeah.
But what has been one of the most interesting cases you've worked? If I know that's kind of a out of the blue question, but you've worked over 1,000 cases at least by this time.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that really stood out to you that you thought, wow, that was really an incredible family, or something that was a crazy service?
Honestly, for me, I'm obviously the Jackson family.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Absolutely the most wonderful, beautiful family that you can think of. Just meeting with them, helping with them with Michael, it was for me the cream of the crop. It was absolutely an eye opener. I trust, and I just love the fact that they entrusted us with this care, and I'm greatly humbled by that. And I know I have no words, but for me that would be the top.
Well, I'm going to say something you're probably going to throttle me for, but it's a true story.
Right.
It really is. Where Michael Jackson is, as you know, there's security cameras there.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of the people who watches them, and they have a lot of problems sending security there quite a bit because they see movement in there. Often, I know it sounds funny, but they really get wigged out about it, that they see some type of shadow that goes in there, and they send security, there's nobody there.
Nothing.
And now, there's always rumors at cemeteries and stuff that, people who aren't resting so peacefully. And I often wonder how much of that might be going on because, I'm a trained exorcist, and I've been on some things that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I've been dangled by my throat by something invisible with witnesses
goodness.
watching me.
Wow.
And and my listeners will absolutely have nothing to do with me if I don't ask this question. Have you ever had any, I guess, abnormal experiences, what you call abnormal experiences in your work?
I have. I honestly have. I think we work in that very special or specific trade. I remember actually my first one. I was working on a young man. It was probably about midnight, and the young man had suffered a trauma to his face. And I was working on him, and what happened was, we were full of gear, our face mask, everything, and I saw something in the corner of my eye. I looked, and what I saw is just a silhouette of a person. I could see the head and the shoulders, just this bright white, smoky silhouette. And so I took my stuff up. I'm like, it's late. It's got to be something else. But that was my very first experience. And I can never forget that.
Wow, I bet not. Well, I saw a lot of stuff doing hospice, and I appreciate you sharing that because there are some people who have those experiences and they won't talk about it because they're afraid of how it sounds. Sure. But we have real people here listening to us, and I'm glad you're able to share it. We're coming up on our pretty close to the end here. Again, I want to thank my guest, Jesse Ruiz of Personal Funeral Planning. I will be putting his information up on the website. In the meantime, what is your phone number?
It's the area code 909-762-4027.
I also want to give a great thank you to Brandon, who's done a wonderful job again, and he keeps us sounding good and sounding powerful over a microphone here on KCAA Radio. Hey, how about that? Gary Owen's got nothing on me, baby. Shout out to Gabby. I miss you, baby. I'll see you in about an hour when I get home through traffic. And some of the other friends listening around town, Luciana in Brazil, and Christina in the Philippines, and Margaret Bass, who's going to be doing work with me. So again, on July 14th of 2018, I will be in Claremont with Martha Bass doing a workshop. Follow us on Facebook for that. And on July 20th, I'll be in Covina at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church, 7 o'clock that night, doing a book signing and a Q&A. And if no one told you they loved you this week, let me be the first. Thanks for spending this hour with us.
Thank you.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM. KCAA Loma